Welcome to Raptors Weekly for the week of December 8th. The Raptors just finished a 2-1 week, all without their superstar DeMar DeRozan, which takes them to 2-2 without DeMar DeRozan. And joining me to talk about the Raptors and a lot more is Andrew. Andrew, what's up, man?
I'm here to talk about a lot more.
Like that map behind you? That beautiful, large map of the world?
That's right.
Do you want to tell us what that map is?
I would love to tell you two, perhaps even three times what this map is. It is a map of the world, as we all know it.
Earth.
It stretches across my wall.
Mm-hmm.
It is blue for the water. Anyone unfamiliar with a standard Mercator map? It is green for landmass, with brown for hilly or mountainous areas. And it's pretty much got all of the major continents.
Yeah, it's a massive map. Covers Andrew's entire wall. It's a thing of beauty.
It is. I'm thinking of launching my own podcast where I just discuss the map at length in visual detail.
Looking forward to that.
Challenge Serial.
We also got Will, which looks to be in a dorm room or locked in a cage. I don't know which one it is.
It's both. It's both. Yeah. My walls are very plain.
All right, man. Let's start with the Cleveland game. I went to this game because Blake had an extra ticket. His buddy bailed on him, so he called me as an afterthought, and I went expecting good things from the Raptors. And instead, I got a bit of a stinker, a low-effort game, especially from Terrence Ross, which we'll talk about momentarily. But overall, not a pleasant game to watch. Their effort was really poor in that game, especially the young guys, Valanciunas and Ross. And they ended up dropping a home date to the Cavs. I think the final was 105-91. Not a good game overall. What stuck out for me was the lack of effort by Terrence Ross. What'd you make of this?
I think Terrence Ross is not an ideal person to try and guard LeBron James. Terrence is he's physically a lot weaker than some of the larger threes in the league. That's why it's a little bit of a problem with him at that spot and why DeMar will often try and guard those guys. I think he got bullied early. I don't think he ever thought he could guard LeBron, and as soon as LeBron beat him once or twice, I think he kind of checked out and got down on himself.
Is that a proper response, though, to being bullied, to getting checked out? Because that's what he did. He was literally checked out of the game.
Sure, I know. I mean, it's not the response that you want. I think that it is the response that often happens. I don't think that this is the first time we've seen LeBron James beat a younger player mentally pretty much right off the bat.
It wasn't like LeBron was beating him in like the post. It's not like LeBron posted up and then backed his way, into the paint and then just dunked all over Terrence. Because like if he did that, or LeBron just overpowered him in transition, that's understandable. Like that's just the simple physics of it. LeBron's much bigger, but it was like Terrence getting just destroyed and by screens and falling behind, and especially him and Jonas were attacked repeatedly in the pick and roll between LeBron and Varejao, and it was either Varejao will get a wide open, a little set shot, or LeBron will get to the hoop. It was ridiculous, and it's okay to lose LeBron in certain scenarios. Obviously, this is LeBron James we're talking about, but like losing him around screens and things are somewhat preventable if you can just be smart and apply a lot of pressure. And I don't think he didn't put a lot of effort in, I thought, Terrence. And it's not like he made LeBron work on the other end either. So
this isn't the first time we've talked about Terrence really having a hard time just getting around screens on defense this year. I'm not sure what that's about. I'm trying to think back if I noticed that at all last year or if that's something different this season. I'm not sure.
I think he's just being put into more positions where he has to negotiate screens, so we're seeing a bigger sample, and he's not faring well. My beef wasn't even so much on the defensive side. Yeah, he was poor there, but just offensively, Jack Armstrong talks about like offensive toughness, where the cuts are hard, there's purpose in your movement. He just has none of that, and I don't know how much that is Dwayne Casey's offense. It's more of a freelance offense where you have the freedom to go wherever you want to go, pretty much. But with Terrence Ross, I just don't see him exerting enough energy or mental effort to think of where he might be able to get his points. I just see him drifting casually with his hands on his hips on the perimeter. Being at the game, I think, helps sometimes, where you just zone in on one player and just follow him across the court on multiple possessions. Maybe you don't get that on TV as much. And I saw that, and I didn't like what I see. And I got to thinking, is he really a deserved starter on this team right now? Like, is he the best small forward we currently have on the team? And it's really debatable with James Johnson coming off the bench.
I disagree with you pretty largely on that. I think that he certainly deserves to be in the starting lineup. I think it's a spacing issue. I think you need to have him there to shoot threes. I think James Johnson's not a great three-point shooter, especially from outside the corners, but you need to think about lineup balance as well. You need to think about how the second unit is going to be able to produce at a high level as well, which is what they've been able to do in their wins and what's contributed to a large extent to why they're in the top couple teams of offense this year. James Johnson is able to take a more aggressive role on that second unit, and he's able to guard multiple positions and be a strong force. And I don't think that if you have Terrence Ross out there doing the same thing on the second unit where he's just sort of fading in and waiting for a pass on his spot, then he's not going to give you the offensive production, and he's going to hurt your spacing with the starters.
He's shooting 43% from three, so
yeah,
he's not
he's doing awesome.
He's doing great from 3-point line, yeah. So there's no complaints there. I just think in every other area of the game, he's not performing up to what he's capable of. And in the Cleveland game, I counted one drive. And this is not a Cleveland team which plays great defense by no means. And he had one drive in his entire time. I think he played like 28 minutes or whatever. Not happy with what he's doing. But let's move on to the other guy people are talking about after that game, Valanciunas. Again, going up against Varejao. Not a good game for him.
Yeah, and Varejao is not even a tough cover. Like, yeah. Varejao is a smart guy. He knows where to move. He's very much like Amir Johnson. But, I mean, like, if you just kind of pay attention and, make the right reads, and he just seems to not be able to do that right now. He's extremely slow. I caught some highlights of him in his rookie season. He was very mobile. And the plan at the beginning, I remember Dwayne Casey was quoted as, he's got like Joakim Noah potential, right? And Noah's known for being very smart, being very agile, being quick, and being strong. And right now, Jonas isn't very agile. He isn't very quick, and he's not making smart defensive possessions. You're seeing it almost with every team now. They're making a point to involve him in pick and rolls, try to get him to make decisions, try to take him away from the basket, because he really doesn't know what to do except on defense, except to stand at the rim. And while that's a good thing, obviously you want your center to be protecting the rim, but you also want him to be able to adapt and make reads. And right now Jonas really can't do that, and it's forcing Dwayne Casey's hand quite a bit in timing to take him out.
It seems like whenever we've asked Valanciunas to change the way he plays a little bit, it really takes him a long time to adjust to the mental aspect of that. Like, it looks like he's trying to make active decisions, and he's just not processing the math very quickly. He's not a super quick guy, but he's always been very mobile. And I think he looks a lot slower this year. I mean, his offensive game has always sort of suffered from this hesitation that he has, and now we're seeing the defensive end where he's thinking, okay, well, what am I supposed to be doing? They focus so much with the verticality on him, and he looks like he's trying to process instead of react. And as long as he's thinking about what he's supposed to do and trying to figure that out until it becomes second nature, he's going to be really slow on that. I think that there's a lot of teams who just get to a point with their centers where it's like, look, on pick and rolls, you're just going to hang back. You're never going to go past the free throw line. If it's a mobile big that you're guarding, then we're just going to have the guys fight over, and you're going to sit back and play the ball. And maybe that's how they have to address that until he's ready.
Yeah, and what makes it look even worse is against Cleveland especially, their guards had a layup line in that game. Right off the high screen, it was just whether it be Irving or whether it would even Waiters had a couple layups. So like when you get that kind of penetration right off, like just one simple screen near the 3-point line and boom, off you go. Granted, Kyrie's a quick player, but it wasn't just Kyrie doing that. It was one screen and you're all the way to the rim. Once that play finishes, the first guy you look at is that the guard, obviously, who will let the penetration in. But the second is like, where's the defense? Where's the help defense? And Amir Johnson, who had a fantastic game, 11 for 15 in that game, you maybe excuse him based on injury or whatnot. But Jonas, he doesn't have that excuse. You look at him and he's always maybe in the wrong position, maybe too far out. And as Andrew said, maybe he's not hanging back. I don't know if that's instruction or that's just him processing, or that's his nature to do that. I have no idea. What's really evident is that the Raptors really have a big void in terms of help defense in the paint, especially shot blocking.
And it didn't go away. Jonas barely played in the fourth quarter, and that layup line that you're talking about didn't go away when he was off the court. Yeah. Like, there are times where Casey pulls Jonas out of games because it's a defensive liability, and whether it's Chuck Hayes or Patrick Patterson who goes in there, it's not solving the problem. So I talked about this last week, and I still think it's true, where you need to let Jonas play through those moments, and you need to have him getting the reps now to figure out what it is he needs to be doing on defense and to get comfortable offensively. Because yes, he looks bad at times, but he's not going to fix that with getting sent to the bench as a punishment every time he makes a mistake or a series of mistakes. And this team cannot go deep in the playoffs without a big center who's able to play low.
But I also understand Casey's perspective there. Like, Hayes and Patterson and Hansbrough, they might not be tall enough or strong enough really to actually affect shots, but they're at least in position to do that. Whereas Jonas, a lot of the time, just isn't even in that. Like, one example, so Cleveland missed a shot in the first quarter. There was a scramble for a rebound. Terrence Ross is supposed to box out Sean Marion, doesn't do it. Marion taps it back out, and the ball's at the very top. Irving has the ball, and Jonas looks into the paint and says to like Amir, like, can you cover, like, I got Varejao right in the paint, whereas like Amir's man was actually the guy who needed help. Kevin Love's all the way at the 3-point line in the corner, wide open. Jonas doesn't see this. A full like 3 seconds elapses before Irving's like, oh yeah, Love's open, kicks it over. Jonas still isn't in time to react. Like, he might be like the most effective guy in terms of protecting the rim, but he doesn't know where to be and move yet. And so it must be extremely frustrating from Casey's part, because at least when you see a guy like Patterson making the right rotations, trying to affect the shot, but not being tall enough, that's one thing. But Jonas isn't even there a lot of the time.
I'm not sure if Patterson is making those rotations. Like, I see there's a lot of times when that unit's been getting torched where Patterson is 8-10 feet off of his man at times.
He's very aggressive in the traps. So
he's aggressive in the traps.
He leaves the rim very readily.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of a problem.
Yeah, with Jonas, it's almost like he's been programmed to act a certain way. Like, he's programmed right now to just guard his man. He doesn't see the game like a forest for the trees kind of deal. He doesn't read the play as a 5-man unit, but he goes, okay, my responsibility is Varejao. I better stick with Varejao. He doesn't know what's happening on the other side of the court. It's things like those that I just don't see him processing properly. And maybe it's inexperience. I don't know. I just think that he's a step slow in reading the game, and it's hurting the Raptors because the Raptors are very thin at center. And when he has a poor game, it magnifies way more than, say, if Kyle Lowry has a poor game, because we got back up there with Lou Williams and Vasquez and whatnot. But if Jonas has a poor game, it's really visible.
I think he's playing nervous, and when you're nervous, you're not thinking, you're scrambling. And when you scramble, you make bad decisions.
Amir Johnson, huge game, 11 for 15, 27 points. We talked about running the pick and roll. He ran that in this game just perfectly, just was in the right spots at the right time, and the finishing was sublime. Anytime he catches the ball, like in that 6 to 8 feet area, you're always never sure what he's going to do, and he lays that floater in. More often than not, it goes in. And I'm just wondering, why isn't that more of a staple of our offense?
He's a very, very smart, savvy pick and roll player that he knows where to move. So sometimes, like when you see Jonas play pick and roll, he's almost always coming up to set a screen, slipping the screen, then rolling all the way to the basket. Whereas Amir, he reads it really well, makes sure to create contact with his man, and then he'll know, should I roll all the way to the basket? Should I short roll? There's one play that I wrote about in the recap where Kyle Lowry gets trapped because the Cavaliers like to trap pick and rolls. So Amir, instead of rolling all the way to the basket, he just short rolls. That makes him available for a pocket pass. From there, he is able to read the defense. Defense has to collapse, and then Amir finds Jonas for a wide open dunk. Like, it's things like that, and he's got such great sense of timing and awareness and movement. The economy of movement, as Zarai said in another podcast. That's really what makes him super effective. That and the fact that he's got a really soft touch. And he's also following up his rebounds very well. He's a very quick second jumper.
Let's move on to the Utah game. Kyle Lowry, 39 points. I took the time out to GIF every field goal he made in this game, and I posted on the site. It's a thing of beauty. I think I spent like an hour watching that, just replay after replay. My favorite was the move at the end of the first half where he had 2 defenders on him, and he faded to the left for like a 3. I think they called it a 2. Just awesome. I think it was the end of the game. I think it was not the end of the first half.
He's great. It's fun to watch him. His field goal percentage, I mean, across the season is actually a little bit lower near the rim than it has been, but on jump shots, Lowry is shooting the lights out this year. Like, I think we're at the point where you're surprised where if he fades out of the post or spots up for a 3, that it doesn't go in.
Yeah, for sure. The only worry I have right now with Lowry, obviously he's playing fantastic basketball. I would say he's playing like a top 10 player. He's producing like that right now. I don't know if he can keep it up. But right now he's playing out of his mind. A lot of those mid-range shots that he's taking are going in. My only worry is that you're seeing Lowry take on a bigger responsibility of the offense, obviously with DeRozan out. But it's when more of Lowry seems to be a little bit more of diminishing returns. So we're talking more like drives to the basket. More shots for Lowry means, going in the post and then taking that turnaround jump shot. In the aggregate, those aren't actually that great of shots, which is a little bit worrisome because I think that when DeRozan's in and Lowry's playing sort of more within the flow of the design offense, he's getting very efficient looks. He's getting drives to the basket. He's getting open 3-pointers on kickouts and stuff. But that's a little bit worrisome. But right now, like he's putting all those in. Like, and that's what the Utah game was. He just kind of abused the Jazz's like rookie guards all then, like Dante Exum, and just no chance on him.
Yeah, I don't know if that's worrisome because that's not the way he plays by default. I think we just talked about JV and Ross underperforming. When you have guys like those having shit games, somebody has to step up. So he's recognized the fact that his teammates aren't picking up the weight, and he's shooting more and he's making more shots. So I think that's more of a response to how his other teammates are doing rather than his nature. So maybe in the long term that's not sustainable, but in the short term, if DeMar DeRozan's out for say 2 to 3 weeks or whatever it is, during that period, especially with other players playing poorly, he kind of has to do that. So I got no problem with that.
I think that Will could be hitting on something that could come around again on playoff time, though, which is that the Raptors don't run a flow offense so much, and they don't run a certain set offense that different types of plays come out of. They have a whole bunch of different sets that they run that are designed to get looks for one guy at one spot on the floor. It's the reason why they're so low in assists this year, is because the whole point of their offense is where are guys comfortable and how can we get them shots from that specific place. So when your design offense is to get spots from a spot on the floor instead of just to get an open shot in general, then in a playoff series, it's a lot easier to set up for that team and to try to take those shots away. We struggled with that in the Brooklyn series last year, where Brooklyn just decided they were going to take away the dribble handoff, and it took us 2 games to realize how to get DeMar the ball where he wanted. I think that if this is more and more a part of the offense where Kyle is doing it on his own without anyone helping, then you're going to see teams adjusting to that, and then that really makes it hard for them to adjust out of that when teams take it away.
It's almost like the product of the offense is to get one good shot, not have options to get multiple possible good shots. So that, like, if you look at the triangle or whatever, I mean, it's the opposite of that, where the triangle is more like, let's move our players in a way where we respond to what the defense is doing and then get the best shot available. Casey's offense is more like, we got to get Kyle Lowry a jump shot from 25 feet on this play. And if that doesn't happen, shit kind of breaks down.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's still the case even when DeRozan's on and Lowry's healthy?
Yeah, I do. I think that DeMar runs a lot of similar sets. That's one reason why they use so little pick and roll. It's one reason why you see them have so few assists. Is that the whole point is, well, like, DeMar likes the ball here. He wants to get the ball here and try to work it there. So there are screens, there are pin downs, but the whole idea is we want a shot from this one spot, and that's what we're working towards. We're not trying to figure out how to get someone open with the ball. And I think that whether it's Kyle Lowry or DeMar carrying that load, it's very easy to scout for that in a 7-game series.
Is that different than last year, or is that the same thing?
They're better at doing the same thing this year than they were last year, and the bench is scoring a lot more efficiently, but they're just doing a much better job with a very similar offense so far with the starters.
The Jazz tried 4 different players on him, 3 at least, Burke, Exum, and Hood, and he burned them all. It got so bad that play coming out of timeouts was just a 1-4 clear out for Lowry, and he scored every time. Thing a beauty to watch, man.
He was amazing. 39's a career high for him, right? Yeah. So.
And some props to Terrence Ross here. Against Hayward, he was guarding Hayward for a big chunk of the game, and he kept him relatively in check. He showed up in this game a bit more than he did in Cleveland. So the effort was here. It was evident. It was even on TV. You could see him like really hound Hayward. Effort was so much better in the Jazz game. Again, I'm going off on Terrence Ross, man. He's my whipping boy this week. So prior to that was the Sacramento win. It's 117-109 in Sacramento. We caught a break here. No DeMarcus Cousins will, which really helped out. But that really didn't stop Jonas Valanciunas from having a bad game.
Yep, and I was really surprised because the Kings' front line without DeMarcus is pretty thin. We're talking about guys like Ryan Hollins, who is just very, very... He's like Lauren Woods. He's almost exactly like Lauren Woods. It really seems like two things, like the Raptors have a hard time getting Jonas the ball. Like, it takes a lot of the shot clock to actually set Jonas up in the post, which is a bad thing because if you're a point guard and you realize, okay, if I toss Jonas the ball, he's going to have like 5-6 seconds to work with it. And if he doesn't score, then we're basically fucked because, like, there's no second option to create offense with that little time left.
Yeah, Lowry was, again, big game from him. 27 points, 10 of 21 shooting, 13 assists in this one. So he did pretty much everything here. And the guy starting instead of DeMar DeRozan, Greivis Vasquez, had a pretty good game as well. But we'll talk more about Vasquez after the break. Welcome back to Raptors Weekly, Part 2. Let's start by talking about Greivis Vasquez, who has been starting in place of DeMar DeRozan. He's 22 for 50 in a starting role, 44%. not bad shooting. He just had one nightmare of a game, which was against Cleveland. Personally, as we talked in the last pod, I thought that the Raptors should have gone with James Johnson to get more defense into the lineup. So far, so good, Andrew?
Yes and no. He's produced well offensively in the starting lineup. He's introduced a little bit more of the pick and roll, and especially in the first quarters of games, he's helped take a lot of load off Lowry, which has been key because Lowry has pretty much been everything that we do at both ends of the floor the whole fourth quarter. So if Vasquez can help out with that early on, it's nice. But we saw Casey talked about wanting to put Vasquez into the starting lineup because of how good the pairing of him and Lowry was down the stretch last year when they were plus 18 in a lot of minutes together, plus 18 points per game. And I mean, that's phenomenal. But this year, they haven't been quite as good. There's actually 3 different guys in the second unit that Vasquez has been more efficient with than Lowry. And I think that what we're seeing is Vasquez is okay with the starters as far as treading water goes, but the bench scoring has suffered a fair bit. They're trying to sort of tinker around with when they're putting guys in and out. And I think that it's no mistake that Lou Williams has been a lot colder from the floor without Vasquez playing as many minutes with him because teams are just ready to key on him. They're not as ready for a multifaceted offensive attack from that second unit. And I would like to see James Johnson play more of a role in the starters, just A, for defense, but B, because I think that it offers a lot more creative opportunity to the scoring on the second unit.
Our bench is probably our biggest advantage right now. And whenever you take offense away from that, you take away from that advantage. Again, its byproduct is Lou Williams not being as effective as he was with Vasquez in there. So this is kind of playing out kind of how I thought it would, where the Raptors do get more offensive punch in the starting lineup, but over the course of the game, the bench isn't as effective, which means that, like for example, against Cleveland, when they got in Dion Waiters, who's been total shit this season, and basically other teams make runs when Dion Waiters is in the game, we weren't able to do that just because we didn't have enough offense in the game.
Well, I think I almost disagree with almost all of these points. I'm very, very much in favor of Vasquez in the starting lineup because if you look at the Raptors offense, they play horns, and if you play horns, you need 2 ball handlers who are able to do something with the ball. So you cannot start James Johnson in Greivis Vasquez's place because then Lowry's doing all the ball handling. You only have action on one side of the floor ever.
Well, that's why you have Terrence Ross, because he should be able to do more ball handling.
Terrence Ross cannot create for himself off a pick and roll, off a screen. He can't drive to the basket. He can't create another shot for another guy. Like, that's just not something in Terrence's repertoire right now. He's had plenty of opportunity to do that this year and last year. He hasn't shown it yet, so I'm not necessarily counting that as something. So Greivis is good because if they shut down, one side of the floor, Lowry can quickly switch to the other side. Vasquez can attack from the other side. And I think a lot of the Vasquez's floaters and stuff are coming off that type of play. Like, the starting lineup needs a second ball handler, so that's why I don't think James Johnson is a good choice. If you want to take James Johnson and replace Terrence Ross, then maybe that's a better option. I know you're giving up some shooting, but really Terrence Ross, I don't know not how much floor spacing he's really getting because it seems like defenders are willing to cheat off him. James Johnson does provide you such a big uptick in defense. In terms of the bench, I think Lou Williams is just getting cold. If you go back and look at the shots that he was taking while he was hot, it was a lot of individual efforts, or it was like coming off a screen. They're still running every single end of the quarter play for him, and he's now just missing all of those. Probably because he, wasn't going to shoot 100% on that ridiculous non-play. So they should probably actually call a play once in a while instead of just letting him roam free. And they're staggering like Vasquez and Lowry's minutes. Like, it's usually about the 6-minute mark. One of the 2 of them comes out, Williams comes back in, and then so there's always one of Vasquez or Lowry on the court at once. There should be enough balance, especially with 3 pretty capable point guard type ball handlers. And if it comes down to it, I'd much rather have the starting lineup stay strong than and trade away the bench, then have a weak starting lineup and have a strong bench. Because realistically, it's all about how good you can put out how good your 5-man unit is.
Yeah, I look at Lou Williams' numbers since the injury: 5 for 17 against LA, 1 for 9 against Sacramento, 2 for 7 against Cleveland. He's not. It's had an impact on him. It's not. It's the numbers are there. I mean,
but it wasn't like Greivis Vasquez was like driving and then finding Lou Williams was open. Like that was a lot of Lou Williams just getting really hot, and this is what happens with gunners.
Mm-hmm.
At least, like even when they play together, it's not like they had great synergy. I think that's something we noted in the beginning of the season. It was just like not a lot of interplay between the 2 of them. So I really don't see how that it could really affect Lou that much. I think Lou's just cold.
I think he's right on that. I think that Lou Williams is starting with the ball a lot. I think that there is a lot less movement on the second unit and a little bit less fast break. I mean, I think he's absolutely right as far as I wish I'd have added that asterisk to my interest in changing up the starting lineup in saying that the problem there is that you do need a second ball handler, and Terrence Ross, your boy Zarar, is not going to do that. I think that there's a reason why we've seen Casey try 7 or 8 different lineups each of the games that DeMar has been out so far, and pretty much all of the tinkering has, with the exception of the starting lineup, there's no lineup that he's tinkered around with that has been better after the DeMar injury than they were before. That's not a great answer.
He hasn't given Landry Field a shot yet, so it's TBD.
Free Landry Fields or Bruno. Bruno is not an option. I'm seeing in the comments that people are calling for Bruno to get some backup minutes. No, Bruno cannot play basketball at the NBA
During
level
the game, as LeBron was tearing us apart, Blake was next to me and he goes, what if they got Bruno and put him in on LeBron James and said, you know what? Just, give him like 4 feet of space, whatever it is, 6 feet of space, and just stand like this with your arms spread. Could he do any worse than what Terrence Ross was doing?
Sure.
You know what? It would have been better if Bruno even scored one time on LeBron James.
Yeah.
the house would have come down.
Let's talk about the East here. I happened to see the Golden State Chicago game from I think it was yesterday, and the Warriors took an early lead, and Chicago came back. But really, they were never really in the game. You kind of got the sense that the Bulls just didn't have enough to stay with the Warriors. And I know it's the Warriors been playing fantastic basketball and all
they
that.
won 12 straight.
But at the same time, I looked at Chicago, and they're like, there are obvious weaknesses here. Anybody who thought that Cleveland or Chicago might be runaway winners of the East, at this point are kind of being proven wrong in the early season. And when you look at the Eastern standings right now, you got the Raptors at 15-5, then you got a bunch of teams, Atlanta, Washington, Cleveland, who are like, within 3 games. So the East looks to be wide open. The Raptors' number 1 position in the East right now, is this a false position, or are they really the best team in the East right now?
I think they've played like the best team in the East so far, but qualitatively, they're still a notch behind Chicago and Cleveland. However, I think this is something that we all anticipated coming into the season. I even the most ambitious Raptors fan didn't think in their heart of hearts that the Raptors were actually better than both these two teams. But I think the fact that the Raptors have played so strong thus far, being 15-5, it's definitely given me confidence, and it's given me pause to think maybe the Raptors aren't actually that far from that level of quality of team. Again, I still think Cleveland on their best day is much better than the Raptors on our best day, to be honest. And I think I'm less bullish on Chicago. I think the Raptors are actually relatively close to Chicago, but yeah, I mean, it seems like the top place in the East might actually be, for the taking a little bit this year. At least in the regular season. I think the Raptors have a decent shot of actually finishing first, which would be amazing.
Yeah, it's worth noting for this argument that there's a very different thing between being the number 1 seed and being the best team in the East. I think the biggest tragedy of the DeMar injury is that we had a really good chance of locking down the number 1 seed before that happened, and I think that that's an opportunity that isn't necessarily gone, but is going to be exceedingly difficult to make up for now, whereas I think we had the best shot at locking that spot down before. Whether or not we're the best team is a very different question, and I don't think we look like it right now, but I mean, I think everyone is waiting for 1, 2, or 3 injuries to happen in Chicago because Tibbs plays his players 43 minutes a night. I mean, there's Derrick Rose there. There's a lot of older guys. Noah's already playing hurt. Taj Gibson is already hurt. I think they're very vulnerable at the 3 spot, and there's a guy named LeBron James that plays in Cleveland. That's going to be a problem for them. Washington is really coming on, and that's another team that kind of makes me nervous there because I think they can provide a lot of problems for us.
This game against Cleveland, the one we lost. I mean, the night before the Cavs beat the Knicks at Madison Square Garden. In the post-game interview, they had Kyrie talk to TNT, and he immediately pointed out, we got no time to celebrate. Tomorrow we're playing the best team in the East, the Toronto Raptors. So they had this date circled on their calendar with a laser-like focus that we got to go to Toronto and beat the Raptors, not just for the win, but psychologically having that boost because they were beaten by the Raptors on their home court. I think it was psychologically a big win for Cleveland, and this might propel them further and make them go on even a bigger run unless the Raptors are able to stop them this week. So I thought just like it was a positive win for them, it was a really negative loss for the Raptors because losing on your home court to the team you're supposedly going toe-to-toe with, doesn't bode well. And I thought there was maybe a chance of a confidence lost after a game like that. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but I just felt like it kind of sagged the energy out of the ACC and the team because it was such a disheartening loss.
The Raptors are missing DeMar DeRozan. Like, that's a huge, huge thing to play against. Like, if Matt Moore were commenting on the Cleveland win, he would have to say that came with an asterisk. And the rest of the season schedule is actually really easy. Like, it's not like the Raptors are definitely going to play some more tough stretches, but the rest of the season isn't going to be super tough schedule-wise. So
that's the thing. I mean, when there are bloggers online talking about how, look at the Raptors schedule, but look at the record they played so far, it's like, sure.
That's who they're going to play the rest of the season.
Exactly. Like, point to me where the tough part of their schedule is.
There's like a road trip in about 2 weeks, I think, when they go west basically for the holidays, and that's a really tough 5-game stretch. But then aside from that, like it's
it's Chicago, Clippers, Denver, Portland, and then Golden State. So those very easily you could see as 5 straight losses. I mean, if things don't go right. So that's the tough stretch that Andrew, I think most people point to, is that towards Christmas they do have and they come back to face. Also, Phoenix is on that trip too, so it's a 6-game trip, which is very tough. So there is a big tough stretch, which is one of the toughest of the season. Yeah.
But there's a 6-game stretch. But I'm saying there's people pointing to like a 15-game sample size and saying it'll balance out later. It's like, well, no, there's going to be stretches of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 hard games at a certain point. But we do not play anything close to the most difficult schedule in the league. There are some benefits to never playing any nationally televised games, and just random luck-wise, maybe it's because of where we are geographically, but we play more than, I think there's only 4 teams who have more games against opponents who are on the second night of a back-to-back or third night of a 3 and 4 days, and we don't play a lot of those. So
it really has to be on the fringes of the country or
exactly
the landscape, which you can see on Andrew's map. Sorry.
All right, so with that, we'll take a break, and we'll come back and talk about the week's schedule. Welcome to part 3 of Raptors Weekly. Looking ahead to the week, the Raptors have on the docket, they got Denver, Cleveland, Indiana, and New York. But the most exciting news is the Raptors will be on national TV, NBA TV style, against Denver, 7:30 p.m. start. I was talking to Butch Carter, former Raptors coach Butch Carter, on Twitter, and he mentioned that the Raptors' biggest needs right now is a shot blocker. That's the one thing they need before they can call themselves, or at least be in the discussion of being an elite team in the East. The forums caught wind of this, and they started looking up trades and who they could acquire. And Kenneth Faried's name pops up a lot. And earlier in the season, there was some rumblings that he wasn't really happy in Denver, or his teammates hated him. I heard a bunch of reports there. Denver, since starting off slow, went on a bit of a run, but they've now lost 3 straight. So, Andrew, let's talk about Kenneth Faried in Toronto. Would he be a good fit?
So Kenneth Faried will definitely be in Toronto the next time that Denver plays against the Raptors, and that is the only time Kenneth Faried, barring a possible trip to Caravana sometime in the summer, will ever be in Toronto. There's no way that makes sense on a couple levels. He just got a massive contract extension this summer, and to make the money work on that trade, we would have to give up one of our top players, and that's not happening. I think he's also, look, Kenneth Faried is a more energetic, slightly smaller, and more polished, and less polished defensively, but maybe more exciting offensively version of Amir Johnson. To say that Kenneth Faried is a shot blocker is an inaccurate statement. To say that Kenneth Faried has some awesome highlights blocking shots is a very true statement. But he does not guard the rim. He does not keep opponents to a low field goal percent. He can guard the rim in certain scenarios, but he cannot guard bigs, and he gets abused defensively from a team perspective. I love to watch him, but I would not enjoy so much having him on my team. And I just think that there's no way that makes sense in a contract sense, or who we would give them. I mean, who would they even take? Kenneth Faried is a great player that they would expect on a long contract, and they're no.
Will, I think he's on the fence with Kenneth Faried.
Yeah, it seems like you really like Kenneth. I think Denver actually has 2 other shot blocking options that are probably cheaper. Mozgov is only making $5 million this year, and if Denver wants to blow it up, I think that they could probably get something decent for him. I don't know if I necessarily trade like a Terrence Ross for him. Maybe like a future protected first. That'd be decent. Mozgov would be a really good fit here in Toronto. He could definitely. He's like a Rasha Nesterovic type, but like a younger Rasha. he could definitely stand at the rim. I know like everyone thinks of Mozgov as that guy that Blake Griffin dunked all over, but he's actually pretty effective in guarding the rim otherwise. And then JaVale McGee, it's an option. Masai Ujiri once signed JaVale McGee and traded for him.
So Denver come into the ACC having lost 3 straight. This is the first night of a back-to-back for the Raptors because the day after they played the Cleveland Cavaliers in Cleveland, so you got to watch the starter minutes. Denver, again, lost 3 straight. Andrew, pick it here. They lost to Portland, close game, 105-103. They got blown out against Washington. They lost to Atlanta, a bit of a blowout, 96-84. And now they're going to wind up their Eastern road trip with the Raptors.
Denver is bad. They're a dumpster fire for the most part on defense this year. They've taken the best home court advantage in sports and done very little with it. They are giving up a massive amount of points per game, which usually just the fact that teams play so many second night of a back-to-back games there, or the high altitude usually helps them out a little bit with. But they're getting devastated at home. They're getting devastated on the road, and they don't play organized basketball. They have some really interesting pieces, but that's one of those, if you're a decent team, you should be circling that as a win every time.
I don't think the Nuggets are that bad. They have stretches where their offense looks really good. Ty Lawson's hurting with a bum ankle. He suffered that injury last year, and for some reason he just couldn't rehab or heal it this year. It could be a Amir Johnson type scenario. So his shooting numbers are really down, but he's still a really fantastic playmaker. Wilson Chandler is he's almost exactly the same as Jeff Green in that, like, he's a big wing who can occasionally get really hot from deep right now. I have him on fantasy teams, so I'm seeing his scores every night. He's been very hot of late. He scored 29 points in Sunday's loss to the Hawks. So I think the biggest key with Denver is that they're definitely a very beatable team, and they really rely on depth to win. And since the Raptors do have a pretty strong bench, I think the Raptors are actually pretty well matched to beat Denver. The key would be just to keep their guys off the offensive boards. Guys like Fareed, J.J. Hickson, Mozgov, even JaVale McGee, they love grabbing offensive rebounds. They have a stretch four in Darrell Arthur, which is surprising because I thought that guy was, just like a defense-only guy, but, now he can shoot as well. And the Raptors should have really no problem scoring on them, especially because Lawson's injured.
Andrew's boy, Kenneth Fareed, actually might not play that game because he missed the Hawks game with a lower back issue. So he might not be in the ACC after all, Andrew. Sorry about that.
Well, then, I guess we just won't see him here at all.
And after that, we got Cleveland, a rematch. The third time we're playing the Cavs in this early season. It's 1-1 so far. This is the tiebreaker, sort of. The Raptors looking to get revenge in Cleveland. Can they do it again? I think we just talked about Cleveland a whole lot, so let's just get straight to predictions and whether Terrence Ross can pick it up here. So I'm going to call this reluctantly a loss because Cleveland is just playing really hot basketball right now, and they've won, I think, 6 straight, and momentum squarely on their side, and the Raptors are on a second night of a back-to-back on the road. So let's start with Will.
Yep, I also think it's a loss. I just think the Cavs are a much better team than the Raptors, and the Raptors don't have DeMar DeRozan, and judging from Friday's game, I really don't see what adjustments can necessarily be made strategically to improve the Raptors. I think it's sort of more like Terrence has to be much more stingy on defense. Jonas has to make better reads, but you can't just expect that to happen. So I think this is a loss as well, especially because it seems like Cleveland has actually come up with a pretty good defensive scheme as to how to stop the Raptors.
We have no ability to guard. We really struggle guarding teams where they have someone at the 4 spot that can shoot well. And considering that Cleveland has that, and we still got dominated on the offensive glass by Cleveland, especially Tristan Thompson, while trying to play big, I don't like how that presents in this next game. I think that we drop it again.
I think we actually played small ball against Cleveland in that game at one point. I think Patrick Patterson was the center, I think, and it looked really off. And obviously the Cavs tore us apart there. Yeah, does not look good here. Maybe we could recover by Friday when we face the Indiana Pacers at home. So I haven't watched much of Indiana at all this year. So
That's good.
I'll let Will go.
You're very lucky.
Go for it, Will. Go for it. Give me the Indiana breakdown.
So Indiana has exactly 0 people that can score reliably or efficiently. Their defense is still very stingy. Their perimeter defense obviously is a lot weaker without Paul George and Lance Stevenson. But Hibbert at the rim is very tough, and David West is back. David West is extremely pissed. He's almost always a technical foul waiting to happen. he's very old and he's very grumpy, and this team kind of sucks. We're talking about guys like Solomon Hill, who is probably their best guard at this point until C.J. Watson hasn't really looked like himself yet. Chris Copeland is shooting every time he touches the ball, and he's not a very good shooter. So I think as long as the Raptors can play offense efficiently and smartly and be able to exploit their advantage, especially in terms of wing scoring, shooting from deep, I think this should be a win as well.
It's worth noting that as awful as this Indiana Pacers team is to watch offensively with Copeland and Sloan and others eating all of their possessions, they are the same or better offensively than they were with Paul George and Lance Stevenson down the stretch last year. I don't know how that's true, but that's actually a fact.
Points to ponder.
Could be something wrong with the scheme.
That just goes to tell you how bad they were offensively when they self-combusted the last 2.5 months of the year last year. But they're a very, very vulnerable team because they are doing everything they can to try and put up the kind of defensive effort that they were. I mean, they still have Hibbert down low, and that's helpful, but give Frank Vogel credit for squeezing every little bit of juice out of the fruit that he can just to get 7 wins so far.
Well, speaking of combustible and vulnerable, we got the New York Knicks on Sunday.
Hey-o!
And they have been, as usual, hilarious to watch. The last time I saw them was against Cleveland. The play that stuck in my mind was Carmelo Anthony. The Knicks are down 3, and they have like 18 seconds to tie the game. And the guy waits to release the final shot. He doesn't leave enough time for the offensive rebound. He finally hoists it, misses it. Calderon gets the offensive rebound, but the time has expired and he drills the 3. So it's shit like that the Knicks are doing that has gotten them into a 7-game losing streak. And last night, again, they lost hilariously to the Charlotte Bobcats. Tell us about that, Will.
Okay, so the Knicks had taken the lead, and there's about, 4 seconds left, okay? And we're talking about the Hornets here, who are just dog shit this year. And you know what the Hornets do in crunch time. They give the ball to Kemba Walker, and he usually drains some sort of step-back shot. Instead, they guard the inbound very poorly. It goes very easily to Kemba Walker. And who is guarding Kemba Walker but 38-year-old point guard Pablo Prigioni, who is predictably easily blown by. But then, okay, so he's blown by, but then the Knicks will send help, right? Nope, no help comes whatsoever. Kemba goes right to the basket. It's a game winner. Yeah, the Knicks are very, very sad, disappointing. I'm very much looking forward to them honoring Bargnani. Yeah, the Raptors should win. I mean, I don't know.
Are they going to honor Bargnani?
Just look. Well, they shouldn't. Well, they should, actually.
Well, hang on. Let's talk about this for a second. If you're going to honor T-Mac, who played here for, what, 4 seasons?
3 seasons.
And you got Bargnani, who played here for 6, 7? And he's like the second on points, I guess, or he's pretty high up there on the leaderboards. Not in rebounding, but whatever, in minutes.
He's like third in points.
There you go. You would think he deserves a bit of a mention, no?
Deserves got nothing to do with it. We honored Jalen Rose recently, too, who, don't get me wrong, I'm a big Jalen Rose fan, but that had less to do with the fact that Jalen Rose was this great Raptor and more to do with the fact that Jalen Rose is a great brand and a popular personality.
Give the people what they want.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the same thing is with Tracy McGrady. It doesn't matter that Tracy McGrady didn't play here for very long. It matters that thousands of kids have Tracy McGrady jerseys, even if they don't say Toronto on it. Do you know who doesn't have thousands of Andrea Bargnani jerseys from
Italy,
other teams?
Yeah, man. Think of that.
Yeah.
Do they?
He probably has a bigger global presence than Tracy
everywhere.
McGrady.
What they should do is put the I Believe I Can Fly YouTube video up in slow motion where Bargnani tries to dunk for the Knicks last year and just slams his face up.
That's what they should do. Like, just create a highlight reel of Bargnani missing shots as a Raptor, traveling on that stupid little pump fake, then drive to from the three-point line.
I just think we were laughing at it, but I just think it's awkward that you're not going to honor a guy who gave his blood and sweat for 6 years.
I don't know. No.
No, you're not going to honor him?
No, I think we should. No, I'm firmly in the camp of we should honor him, and I just want to see what the crowd does.
Yeah, for sure.
Everyone gets primo pasta sauce.
I was at the game against Cleveland when they honored a bunch of. They had Magic Johnson there for the Mandela thing, and
Charles
it kept
Barkley.
going on and on. When T-Mac's honor time came, the Raptors were like, had just given up like an 8-0 run, and were playing like shit. So nobody really felt like getting up and applauding. So I thought he got the short end of the stick in terms of the applause.
Yeah, I think they've also. I mean, once you've also applauded 4 or 5 people who aren't even in the game, it gets like, okay, like we're done now.
The team's losing.
Yeah.
It's like Drake's in the building. Let's give Drake.
He wasn't even there. I didn't see him.
Yeah, apparently he wasn't there.
That kind of wraps up the schedule. We're gonna pick us to beat the Knicks in New York, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That team is so bad.
Yeah.
Samuel Dallenberg and Quincy Acey are starters for that team. They start. Quincy Acey is a fun guy. He's energetic. I pull for Quincy Acey. My God, he starts for an NBA team. Like, come on.
Not only is he starting for an NBA team, but it is so bad for Knicks fans that just the fact that he actually puts an effort out there has Knicks fans defending him all the time.
He's actually one of the Knicks' better players. It's not Acey's fault that he's starting. It's that the fact that the Knicks are so poorly constructed that.
Who's gonna get fired first, Derek Fisher or Brian Shaw?
Brian Shaw.
Brian Shaw.
Because Derek Fisher just got his deal, so that's probably the only thing, right? And I just think it's really awkward, man, that Derek Fisher's there, and when he was clearly not first choice for the Knicks job. It was Steve Kerr.
Yep.
There was a play the other night where he was rushed on. He was basically sitting at center court watching the offensive set, trying to yell at them what to do.
Do you think Derek Fisher owns Pablo Prigioni in practice? Because I think that's what happens.
You think Derek Fisher participates in practices?
I think Derek Fisher is good enough to play for the Knicks.
He is, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Is Derek Fisher a worse coach than Scott Brooks if Derek Fisher brings Derek Fisher off the bench in an important game?
No, that would be a great choice. They need a guy who actually is able to pass the ball to, someone who can score, because that's at least what Fisher can do.
So the Knicks are coming to town on December 21st. I've actually just made a decision to actually go to that game, just based on this conversation.
Basketball Schadenfreude. Look, Carmelo Anthony is really impressive to watch in person.
He is. It's only a matter of time until Carmelo shut down for the season because of a mysterious injury. Because, if you were Carmelo, I would check out of this season. I have my money. I know that they might sign a free agent in 2015. You know what? I'll wait until that happens because there's no point in me busting my ass for this incredibly terrible New York Knicks team.
If you're a big fan of basketball Twitter, you'll notice that Carmelo Anthony is getting photographed in increasingly ridiculous, large, oversized Pharrell hats after the games. And I like to read that, with each growing, more ridiculous hat, it's just a sign of him being more and more sad about what's happening.
He's like, this is the only pleasure I get out of life now. It's these hats.
I feel like I need to reflect how I feel on the inside. Outside.
All right, we've gone off the rails. I think we should probably end this now. It's going to be, a 3-1 week? Okay, yeah. With the loss coming to Cleveland. Should be a good one. Enjoy it.